All right, so get this. We're going deep on female sex tourism today.
Wow. Yeah.
Ever heard of the term rent-a-dread?
Yeah, it's, well, it hints at this whole world we don't often talk about.
Yeah, women traveling for romantic and sexual experiences.
Exactly.
And we're not just talking Jamaica, although that's where this rent-a-dread thing is big.
Right.
We'll be looking at everywhere from busy Thai streets to African safari lodges.
You'll see it's way more diverse than people think.
Yeah, for sure.
Really challenges those assumptions about who's involved in sex tourism.
Yeah.
And each place we're looking at has its own cultural context,
Right.
adds another layer.
So, okay, let's start with the Caribbean, Jamaica specifically.
Right.
Our sources show how these rent-a-dread guides, usually men with dreadlocks who give tours,
Yeah.
they sometimes end up in relationships with female tourists,
Right.
ones that go beyond just the typical tourist guide thing.
And it's not just like quick flings either.
Oh,
Yeah, one Jamaican guy in the documentary said some women are looking for something more, deeper connections, not just a casual thing.
that really makes you think about what these connections mean,
Yeah,
especially with the economic differences between tourists and locals in Jamaica.
absolutely. That's a huge factor.
Yeah,
It raises questions about power dynamics and if these relationships can be equal.
right, for sure.
We'll get into those ethical parts later.
Definitely. Okay, so from Jamaica, we jump over to Gambia.
Okay.
You can practically feel the energy of these marketplaces from our research.
Mm-hmm.
Where tourists and locals interact, it's kind of blurry. Is it commerce or is it romance?
Wow, yeah.
It's interesting how these places, so different from daily life, can spark these connections.
It's like travel creates this sense of freedom,
Yeah,
and people explore sides of themselves they might not back home.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not just marketplaces either.
Oh.
Our sources even talk about African safari lodges,
Oh, wow.
usually associated with adventure,
Wow.
But they become these unexpected places for romantic encounters.
The setting, the thrill of the unknown, I can see it.
Yeah,
Creates a unique atmosphere.
totally. And speaking of exotic, our deep dive also takes us to Southeast Asia.
Quite.
Thailand and Bali, they've got the nightlife, the spiritual retreats. It's a mix,
That is.
attracting women from all over.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what specifically draws women looking for those romantic or sexual encounters there.
It's intriguing for sure.
Yeah.
Each location has its own flavor,
Right.
a unique blend of culture and chances for connection.
So you've got Jamaica, Gambia, Thailand, Bali, just a glimpse at how global this is.
Yeah.
But what's pushing women to do something often seen as taboo?
Well, one big thing from the research is a desire for excitement and adventure.
Makes sense.
You've got women jet skiing in Clearwater, trying exotic foods, exploring new cultures with local guides.
I can see the appeal.
Yeah.
It can be really alluring.
Travel, especially to far-off places, can be so freeing.
Right.
It lets people break from routine, embrace a freedom they don't get every day.
Totally. And for some women, that freedom includes exploring desires and fantasies that they might not feel comfortable with at home. It's
Yeah.
like travel gives them permission to be different.
To push boundaries and live life to the fullest.
Yeah, on their own terms.
Exactly.
But it's not all about seeking thrills, though, right?
You're right, there's more.
Our sources also talk about empowerment as a motive.
That's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Unlike that stereotypical view of sex tourism where women are passive,
Yeah.
these women are often the ones in control.
Totally, they're calling the shots.
They're shaping the experience, dictating the terms, choosing their partners.
It flips the script.
It really does.
It challenges how we usually see power dynamics in this.
Completely.
They're not just going along for the ride.
Not at all.
They're making their own choices.
And that agency can be so empowering.
Yeah, especially for women who maybe feel constrained back home.
Exactly. It challenges this idea of women as passive
Right.
and highlights their agency and autonomy in getting what they want.
And it's not always about romance or even physical connection.
Oh, right.
Some women are drawn to this because they genuinely want cultural exchange.
Yeah. The documentary shows this beautifully.
Yeah.
Imagine taking part in a local ceremony, learning their dances, having deep conversations.
Right, going beyond the surface level touristy stuff.
It's about forging connections with people from different cultures.
Immersing yourself in new things, broadening your horizons.
Yeah, a different kind of exploration.
It feeds the mind and soul.
It does, and it raises the question,
What's that?
can these interactions, even ones that start with a romantic spark, become something more?
Hmm.
Is genuine cultural exchange possible in this context?
It's a good question, and one we'll definitely unpack further as we go.
Yeah.
But we need to address the elephant in the room,
What's that?
the stigma around female sex tourism.
Right, it's there.
It's undeniable that society views women who do this differently than men.
Yeah,
It's a blatant double standard.
totally. And it comes from these deep-rooted gender expectations.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
It is.
Men get a pass and women get judged.
Yeah.
Why is that?
The documentary has a sociologist who explains it.
Okay.
It comes from these long-standing norms about how women should express their sexuality. There's a different standard, especially for casual relationships or exploring outside traditional relationships.
So this societal disapproval can be really powerful.
Oh, yeah. It leads to shame secrecy.
And it's not just societal judgment either.
Right.
There are ethical dilemmas with female sex tourism.
You're right.
The documentary highlights the economic differences between the fancy resorts and the local communities.
Seeing that contrast forces us to face some hard truths
It does.
about these relationships. Are they truly mutual, or is economics a factor?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And how do we navigate that responsibly?
It deserves careful thought.
And then there's the whole cultural appropriation issue.
Hmm.
The documentary brings up some interesting questions about how tourists can engage with other cultures without exploiting or misrepresenting them.
It's tricky.
It is.
It's like a balancing act.
Right.
Tourists want to experience new cultures.
Yeah.
But it could be superficial or even harmful if it's not done right,
Right.
with sensitivity and awareness.
It's like walking a tightrope,
Yeah.
trying to appreciate without exploiting.
The documentary shows this visually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It contrasts a woman wearing traditional clothes with a scene from a real ceremony. Makes you think, can you really immerse yourself without crossing lines?
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
No easy answers.
For sure.
But by acknowledging the potential problems and talking about it,
Yeah.
we can hopefully move towards better interactions.
They're respectful, for sure.
So we've laid out a lot, the places, the motivations, the stigma, the ethics.
We have.
It's clearly a multifaceted topic
I feel like
that needs a deeper look, ready to dive even deeper.
Absolutely. One of the most fascinating things is how this whole topic challenges what we think we know about sex tourism.
Yeah.
We have these ideas about who does it and why,
Right.
but the reality is much more complicated.
You're so right. It's like we've peeled back the layers of something that seems simple and found this whole world of complexity underneath.
It is.
And it's not even just individual reasons. There's this
That's
whole societal context, too.
Exactly. Culture, gender expectations, economics, all of it.
It all plays a role.
Yeah. And the documentary digs into those bigger societal forces.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. There's a part that looks at how the media portrays sex tourism.
Yeah, okay.
They focus on these sensational stories
Right.
that just reinforce those old prejudices.
It's like we're always seeing images and stories that twist how we see it.
Yeah.
It's hard to see past that surface level.
The documentary tries to challenge those stereotypes, though,
Okay, good.
by showing a more balanced view.
And how do they do that?
They interview women from all different backgrounds who talk about their experiences with sex tourism.
Interesting.
It gives us a glimpse into why they make these choices.
So it's not just about individual stories.
Right. It's bigger than that.
They bring in experts too, right?
We do sociologists,
Yeah.
anthropologists, psychologists.
To give us a better understanding of the cultural and societal stuff going on.
Exactly. That's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just facts. It's about making you think critically about this whole thing.
It's given me a lot to think about, for sure.
Good.
We've talked about the motivations, the stigma, the ethical issues. But where does this all go? What's the future of female sex tourism?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And I think the documentary leaves that open for us to figure out.
Okay.
They don't give easy answers or solutions. It's more about starting a conversation
Right.
about how we can navigate all this in a responsible and ethical way.
So what can we do then as
Right.
individuals, travelers, part of a global community?
It starts with awareness. By talking about this taboo topic openly and honestly,
Yeah.
we can break down the stigma,
Okay.
create a more understanding environment.
And awareness goes with education, right?
Definitely.
We need to go beyond the headlines and really understand the issues.
And that education has to be well-rounded.
What do you mean?
It's about the history, the culture behind these encounters,
Okay.
the power dynamics, the consequences for people and communities.
It's a lot to consider.
It is. And we need to challenge our own biases, too.
Our own assumptions.
We all come at this with our own views.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to look at them critically.
Be open to learning from other points of view.
Exactly. The documentary shows a range of perspectives.
Yeah.
From the women who engage in sex tourism to local people to experts.
That variety is important for understanding the nuances.
For sure.
So what can we actually do as individuals?
Well, the biggest thing is travel responsibly and ethically.
What does that look like?
Be mindful of how we affect the places we visit. Respect customs and traditions, and actually connect with people from different cultures.
Meaningful interactions, not just surface level.
Right, and support organizations that are trying to make things better.
Like the ones fighting exploitation, advocating for women.
Exactly. And we can speak up about those harmful stereotypes.
Challenge them.
Yeah, and promote more accurate ways of looking at this.
Whether it's talking to friends, sharing articles, or online discussions.
It all makes a difference.
We can all shape how people see this.
At the end of the day, it's about recognizing everyone's humanity.
Right.
The women who are involved, the communities, they visit the people in the industry.
They all deserve respect.
They do.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in the arguments and controversies.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to human connection.
And the choices we make.
Exactly. And if we approach these encounters with empathy, we can hopefully create a fairer world for everyone.
I agree.
That was well said. So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. And it seems like there's no simple answer to female sex tourism.
It's complicated.
It is.
It's a topic we'll be talking about for a long time.
But by having these discussions, challenging what we think we know,
and listening to different views.
we can understand this global thing better.
For sure.
It's like we've had this puzzle box,
Yeah.
and we've been opening it up, looking at all the pieces, the motivations, the societal stuff, the economics,
Right.
and there's just not one answer.
No, it's complicated.
It really is, and we talked earlier about that scene in the documentary,
Oh, yeah.
the one with the woman in the traditional clothes and then the actual ceremony.
Right. That was powerful.
It really made me think about that line between appreciating a culture and appropriating it.
It's a tough one.
It is, how can we as travelers make sure we're being respectful?
You have to be constantly thinking about it.
Yeah.
And be willing to learn from the people we're interacting with.
Because we don't have all the answers, right?
There's always more to learn.
I think that's a big takeaway for me from all this.
What's that?
Humility,
Oh, yeah.
We have to approach these encounters with openness and a willingness to listen and learn from other people.
And to be aware of the power dynamics, too.
Right.
Especially with economic differences.
We can't assume everything's equal.
No.
We need to be aware of the potential for exploitation.
Absolutely.
And make choices that are respectful and fair.
Which brings us back to that question from the documentary.
Yeah.
About if genuine connection is possible across those divides.
Cultural and economic.
How can we make sure those connections are built on respect and understanding?
It's a question that sticks with you.
It does.
It makes you think about your own role as a traveler and a citizen of the world.
And it challenges us to go beyond simple judgments.
Right.
To engage with this topic with more nuance and compassion.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to this whole thing.
Good. I'm glad.
I hadn't thought much about female sex tourism before.
It's not something that comes up often.
It's not, and I think the documentary and our conversation today show how important it is to have these talks.
Yeah, even when they're uncomfortable.
They can be, but it's necessary.
By talking about these things that are usually taboo.
Yeah.
We can get rid of harmful stereotypes. Help people understand better.
And hopefully make the world a little more just and equitable.
I hope so.
And maybe we'll learn something about ourselves along the way.
Yeah, discover something new about how we fit into this complicated world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into female sex tourism.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep talking about these important issues.